There is a moment in every royal household when silence speaks louder than any official statement ever could. It does not arrive with fanfare or breaking news alerts. It arrives quietly in the form of a missing name on a piece of paper. And when that paper is a royal decree signed by a king, and that missing name belongs to his own wife, the silence that follows is not just uncomfortable. It is historic. That is exactly what happened when eagle-eyed royal watchers noticed something deeply unusual about a formal document circulating within British royal circles. The decree bore the signature of King Charles III. It bore the signature of Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, his sister, the hardest-working member of the firm, a woman who has devoted her entire life to the crown without complaint or hesitation. But the name of Queen Camilla, the woman King Charles fought decades to stand beside, the woman he loved when the whole world seemed to be against them, was nowhere to be found. Not tucked in a footnote, not listed in a supporting capacity, simply gone, absent, erased as if she had never been part of the institution at all. The reaction was immediate. Royal commentators, historians, and observers across Britain and beyond began asking the same question. What does this mean? Is this a bureaucratic technicality, a quiet administrative reshuffle? Or is it something far more significant? A deliberate, calculated signal about where power now sits inside the British monarchy. To understand what this moment truly represents, it is necessary to understand the long and complicated road that brought Camilla to where she stands today. Because her story is not simple. It never has been. Camilla Parker Bowles and Prince Charles first met decades before either of them could have imagined the consequences. Their relationship predated his marriage to Diana. It survived through years of public scandal, through the collapse of 2 marriages, through the death of Princess Diana and the worldwide grief that followed, grief that, for many people, came attached to deep and lasting resentment toward Camilla. She was blamed. She was vilified. She became, for a generation of Diana loyalists, the symbol of everything that had gone wrong in the fairy tale story they had been sold. And yet she endured. Through the hostility, through the years of being kept largely out of public view, through the careful, slow rehabilitation that Charles and the palace orchestrated over many years, she endured. When she and Charles finally married in April 2005, in a quiet civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall, it felt to many like the end of a very long, very painful chapter. The couple had won. They had survived the scrutiny, the criticism, and the court of public opinion. Camilla had a title, she had a place. She had at last a measure of legitimacy. When King Charles III was crowned at Westminster Abbey in May 2023, following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, Camilla sat beside him and was crowned Queen Camilla. It was a moment that would have been unthinkable to many royal observers just 20 years earlier. The woman once described as unsuitable, unwanted, and unwelcome was now sharing the most sacred ceremonial moment in the life of the British crown. For Charles, it must have felt like vindication. But crowns, it turns out, are not guarantees. And titles, however grand, do not always come with the power and permanence their bearers assume. The British monarchy has always been a living institution, one that adapts, recalibrates, and when necessary, reinvents itself. Queen Elizabeth II understood this instinctively. Over 70 years on the throne, she steered the monarchy through seismic cultural shifts, managing to keep the institution relevant and respected through sheer discipline, consistency, and an extraordinary refusal to show weakness. She rarely spoke about her private feelings. She rarely broke with protocol. She was, in the most complete sense of the word, the crown. When she died, the institution lost its anchor, and everything that had been held in place by her presence, every tension, every unresolved question, every internal debate about what the monarchy should look like and who should have power within it, began slowly to surface. Princess Anne has always been the royal family member most closely associated with Queen Elizabeth's model of service. She does not seek headlines. She does not court controversy. She does not give interviews that make the palace uncomfortable. In a family that has produced its share of drama, Anne is the constant, the one who simply gets on with the work. She carries out hundreds of engagements every year. She has done so for decades. She has never been at the center of a scandal. She has never asked for more than her role demands. But quiet does not mean powerless. And in the shifting landscape of the post-Elizabeth monarchy, Anne's influence has quietly grown into something that those watching closely cannot ignore. The decree that sparked so much discussion is, at its core, a document about structure. It reflects a broader conversation happening within the monarchy about what the institution needs to look like going forward. King Charles, who has dealt with serious health challenges since his cancer diagnosis became public in early 2024, has been thinking carefully about legacy. He has been thinking about which version of the monarchy he wants to leave behind. And the picture that seems to be emerging is one of a leaner, more focused institution, built around a smaller core of working royals, rather than an extended web of family members, each holding ceremonial roles and public positions. The concept has been described by observers as the slimmed-down monarchy, a phrase that gained currency during the later years of Queen Elizabeth's reign and has only grown more relevant since. The idea is straightforward: fewer royals doing the public work, more clarity about who represents the crown, less room for the kind of peripheral drama that has damaged the institution's reputation in recent years. In practice, this means consolidation. It means deciding who the pillars of the monarchy are and organizing everything around them. What the missing name on that decree suggests, and it is important to be clear that much of what surrounds this story is speculation, commentary, and interpretation rather than confirmed palace policy, is that Camilla may not be considered one of those pillars. Whether this reflects a deliberate decision, a shifting internal dynamic, or simply the evolving administrative reality of a monarchy in transition is not something that has been officially confirmed. The palace has not issued a statement explaining the omission. Camilla herself has not spoken publicly about it. That silence is part of what makes the story so compelling. In a world where royal communications are carefully managed and every word from Buckingham Palace is deliberate, the absence of any explanation is itself a kind of statement. It tells watchers that whatever is happening, the palace does not consider it necessary, or perhaps advisable, to offer reassurance. What is documented is the reality of Camilla's public profile over the past year. She has appeared less frequently at major state functions than might be expected of a reigning queen consort. Certain ceremonial roles and patronages that were associated with her have been quietly reorganized. The public narrative around the monarchy has increasingly centered on Charles, Anne, William, and Catherine, the four names that, according to reports, appeared in the decree while Camilla's did not. Princess Anne's involvement in the signing of this document is significant in ways that go beyond the administrative. Anne and Camilla have never been described as close. The relationship between them has always been characterized by a certain careful distance. Anne was deeply devoted to her mother, and Queen Elizabeth's own feelings about Camilla were, for many years, complicated. Elizabeth had insisted, for a significant period, that Camilla not attend events where she would be present. Her eventual acceptance of the relationship was seen as a pragmatic acknowledgement rather than a warm embrace. Anne, who shares her mother's instinct for the institutional over the personal, has always put the crown before individual relationships. If she has aligned herself with a new structure, one that does not center Camilla, it is not because of personal animosity. It is because she believes it is better for the monarchy. That distinction matters. This is not, as far as outside observers can determine, a story about family rivalry or personal scores being settled. It is a story about an institution deciding what it needs to be, and which people fit into that vision. For Camilla, the personal dimension of all this is unavoidable. She spent the better part of 30 years being told in various ways that she did not belong. She fought for legitimacy with patience and persistence. She won. And now, in the twilight years of her husband's reign, she finds herself in a position that feels, to many observers, uncomfortably familiar. Not openly rejected, not publicly humiliated, but quietly, carefully, systematically sidelined. Her public appearances have been dignified. She has continued to carry out the engagements assigned to her without complaint or visible distress. Those close to her have described a woman who understands the realities of royal life better than most, who knows that the institution has always been bigger than any individual within it, and who has made her peace, at least outwardly, with that fact. But the reality of what is happening cannot be entirely contained by dignity and composure. The British public, for all its complex feelings about Camilla, is not indifferent to her situation. There is something that resonates in the image of a woman who fought so hard for her place being quietly edged out of the documents that define that place. For some, it confirms long-held suspicions about how power actually works inside the royal family. For others, it raises uncomfortable questions about what it means to be queen in name if not in function. The broader context of the monarchy's direction under Charles is also worth considering. His health has cast a long shadow over questions of succession, transition, and what kind of institution William will one day inherit. Charles has spoken publicly in broad terms about his desire to modernize, to make the monarchy more reflective of contemporary Britain, more transparent, more focused. A slimmed-down core of senior royals fits within that stated vision. So does a renewed emphasis on service and duty over ceremony and profile. Anne, in this reading, is not a villain in Camilla's story. She is the embodiment of what Charles says he wants the monarchy to look like. She has always been exactly that. The fact that her vision of the institution and Camilla's expanded public role are apparently in tension is not surprising. It is the natural outcome of two very different ideas about what a queen consort should be and do. The question now is what happens next. Royal watchers are watching closely for signals, for changes in Camilla's schedule, for adjustments to her official title or the language used around her role, for any formal statement from the palace that either clarifies or deepens the mystery of that missing name. So far, none has come. What has come is continued speculation, continued analysis, and a heightened public interest in the internal workings of a family that has always fascinated the world. The British monarchy survives, in part, because it is never fully knowable. It offers just enough transparency to feel accessible and just enough mystery to feel extraordinary. The story of Camilla's name disappearing from a royal decree fits perfectly within that tradition. It is visible enough to generate conversation and vague enough to generate interpretation. In royal history, there are precedents for the quiet reassignment of roles, for the gradual reduction of a senior figure's formal responsibilities, for the kind of institutional reshuffling that is never officially announced but becomes, over time, simply a new reality. Whether that is what is happening here, whether this is a deliberate strategy being executed with precision, or a series of administrative decisions that have been overinterpreted by an always hungry royal commentariat, remains genuinely uncertain. What is not uncertain is the symbolic weight of what the world saw in that document. A king, his sister, a shared signature, and where a queen's name should have been nothing but empty space. In a family where tradition is everything, where protocol is not just custom but code, where every detail of every official document carries meaning, that empty space is not nothing. It is a statement. Whether it is a statement about the future of the monarchy, about the limits of Camilla's role, about the quiet rise of Princess Anne, or about something else entirely, only time and the palace will ultimately reveal. For now, the world watches, and waits, and reads between the lines of a document that said everything by leaving something out.